Okay, everybody, this is Sheets, and we're going to be doing the same process for golf this week as last week, sort of. I'm not going to be available tomorrow, so today I'm going to do my own kind of first look, give you guys literally a first look at my very first look. Then Bobby, I think, is going to do his initial takes tomorrow, and then Wednesday we will both get on and finalize our lineup builds and things like that. Very, very strange week this past week in that I did a really nice job well, number one, predicting the winner, but forget that. Number two, I did a decent job at constructing lineups that were low enough owned that I had a chance to win. But unfortunately, the performance in the first couple of days was just really substandard out of all of my guys, such that I only had one lineup that was 6 of 6 out of, I think, 20, and several of the others only had 4 that made the cut. So I was essentially dead in the water, and yet somehow, I guess because of the wild variance of that course over the last day or two, I didn't win, but I somehow scratched back to only lose about 25–30% of my money, which in GPPs is really not bad. So overall, I guess I consider it somewhat a success, but from a process perspective, I was very, very happy with my methods. And so as a result, I'm going to do the same thing this week as I have been. So what we're going to do is literally fire up the salaries for the first time. I'm watching them, and you're going to get my initial takes on lineup construction right now. Okay, so the first thing that I look at right now is that it is a much weaker field than it was last week. Okay, and that's plainly obvious just from gazing at this. There's no DeChambeau, there's no Rory, there's a lot of guys. The other thing I would say is I find it difficult to believe that Koepka is going to play. I mean, he's been really grinding, and there's something wrong with his what is it, ACL or something like that, or his back, and he might be going in for MRI. The MRI said no improvement. I think he could use a week off. So I would not be surprised if he took one. Yet on the other hand, it's a weaker field. So maybe he might take advantage of this opportunity to try to win, I suppose. So looking at this leaderboard, it's so funny. You're going to have to get used to a lot of these guys getting huge price bumps because of the weakness of the field. So let's just look first of all at this first panel, I suppose, and oh my goodness, right? It looks as though, I guess it would be fair to say that Johnson and Koepka, even if he plays, are significantly better than Finau. Okay, I mean, I'm just comparing salaries from normal, right? You normally get Finau at 8,200, and these guys around 10K, and now they're pretty close. I guess it's because Finau had a decent 3 days yesterday, and that was at low ownership also. But I mean, Finau stands out as someone who doesn't belong in this top 3. The other thing I will notice that Tommy Fleetwood makes, I don't know if it's his debut, but is this his first round back from the break? I think it might be. Yeah, it is. And he is known as a really, really good ball striker. And my initial take is that he's going to be over-owned, because this is what happens when guys kind of come back and they're like, ooh, I've just gotten killed in DFS playing this guy, this guy, this guy, and this guy. You know what? Now I can try to play this guy. So I think Fleetwood might end up over-owned. But I do think from a pricing perspective, I think he and Finau look to be very similar. Paul Casey, I think he could be interesting at this price point. First look here. The other look, I would say, this first panel, I would say that maybe Matt Wolf would be my top guy out of this next group, or maybe down to Harris English, something like that. But boy, oh boy, what a weak field, huh? Let's scroll down a little bit and look at the next panel and see if I can at least rank these guys among themselves. Yeah, this is going to be a war, right? It's just going to be a war of guys that are inconsistent. So the first guy I think is going to be a standout for me of this whole group is going to be Sam Burns. I mean, he's been one of the best. I mean, one of the best surprises, let's put it that way. So he's going to be my first look over here, I suppose. And then you have, again, a lot of inconsistent dudes. Norlander, I think, is probably going to be the highest owned of all these, just because, again, he's just been around. He's been on the leaderboard. He had a good run this past week, so he might be a higher owned. So maybe he'd be someone to fade. And Van Rooyen, I mean, he could be better in this spot because this past week was just not the course for him. Let's put it that way. So maybe Van Rooyen, Burns. Those might be the two guys I would first look at from this panel. And now we're down here, man. Now we're already into the dregs of society, so to speak. And these guys are all 8,000. For those of you who've been playing golf since it's come back, I mean, you're used to these guys at like 7K because you've had much stronger fields. So this is going to really just test your mettle, so to speak. I guess the first guy I would look at again from a just first look is probably Scott Stallings. As a matter of fact, Scott Stallings, if I had to say, he's probably the best value on the board so far. If you go through all the guys I've looked at, and this is just eyeballed it, just because Scott Stallings, this has basically been his price for the last month, and he's been perfectly passable. And he has not gotten any price bump into this much weaker field. So Stallings would probably be the first guy that I'd put in my lineup. Troy Merritt, 7,500. He actually got a little more love than I was expecting this past week. So he could be okay. And now we're down here into this range. And again, what I'm looking at is guys that really are just the same price in this field as they have been in stronger fields. So we're looking at guys like Kyle Stanley at 7,300, Kokrak at 7,200, even Tringale at 7,200. So those guys in this group kind of stand out as really strong values. And then we go down into this group here, and you could get a chance to go back to guys like Neesmith at 6,900 or Chase Seifert, who had just several really, really good weeks in a row. So those guys, again, really first look kind of stand out in this group. And then you're probably going to get guys no one's ever heard of down here. Not no one's ever heard of, but I don't know if I'm going to get down here. Vaughn Taylor, 6,800. Bramlett, 6,800 maybe. And then you go down to here. I mean, you want to get sneaky again. You could use that same analysis. You could take guys that are basically this price, that were the same price in tougher fields, like Harry Higgs at 6,600 or something like that. Probably some inherent value in there, and then you're into stuff you really just don't want to play. So, yeah. So that's overall the first look. Let me look at some of these. Let's look at some of these guys. David Hearn, I think Bobby might have played him. Might put him in my player pool at 6,100. Maybe. I think I'd be fair. I'd go to the whole list here. So let's see what you can do. Let's see if we could. I do want to take one of these guys because I do think that Dustin Johnson or Koepka, I think if either of those guys win, I think they could win by a lot. So let's, and Dustin Johnson, especially coming off the plus a zillion performance this past week, maybe people won't trust him. So let's start with him. And let's do this. Let's plug in the guys that we said that we liked, and let's then backtrack just for the heck of it. let's go back to Stallings. We'll put him in here. All right, so if you put Johnson and Stallings in, who are the other guys in this range that I thought were good? See, I wonder if we can get like a Fleetwood, or can you get Koepka also? Can you play them both? Don't think so. Just to see if you put these guys in. I mean, you could. And again, the way this kind of this field lines up, you could. I mean, if Koepka's healthy and he's going to play, you could get Justin. You can get Dustin Johnson and Koepka running away. You know what I mean? From the field. So what would we require to get that done? Well, what it would require is to do what I suggested, is to take guys from down here that, you know, like Harry Higgs. Yeah, you're not going to be able to quite do it unless Stroud, guys like that. Nah, you're not gonna quite be able to get Johnson and Koepka if you want to get Stallings also. You don't want to get Stallings, then you can go do it. Then you can go do it. But so let's say you put Seifert in here. See, this is kind of gross to have to play here. But what you can do is, let's say you start with Johnson, and we'll go back to, who's the guy that I mentioned? Burns. Okay. So if we did that, we played Burns, Stallings. Let's say you don't even need Higgs. Maybe we'll get back to Seifert in a second. So if you do Johnson, and then you can go with Burns and Stallings in this range, then you can actually get, that's interesting, guys like Van Rooyen. And again, you think it's not a big deal, but again, considering what this field is like, that's a pretty big deal, actually. Do you need any of this really that badly? So you play Stanley, 7,300, for example. So now you get 7,500 a player. Then you can go back to Troy Merritt. Yeah, this is going to be even tough to get in. I don't want to say tough to get in Johnson, but maybe Ryan Armour, somebody steady like that. So this is what your lineup's going to look like if you play Dustin Johnson, okay, for better or for worse. And remember, every slate is different, so you're going to have to make peace with the fact that you're taking guys like this. Because remember, you're taking guys like this, but again, you're not fighting great golfers either. You know what I mean? So that's what you do if you do Dustin Johnson. Now, I just wonder what would happen if you tried to do something like, now you can't do, like, what would be the difference if you went from Johnson down to Fleetwood? I mean, I guess then you get to move up to maybe a Norlander or a Doc Redmond, but is it really that great to move up to those guys? I mean, I don't think so. I think that this is what my first goal is to get Dustin Johnson or Koepka in the lineup. Okay, I don't really need to play Finau. I don't. He's going to be higher owned because of his performance. He's just way too, from a value perspective, he's just not even close to these guys, as far as I'm concerned. As far as ability goes, like, I'm going to do some more research on Fleetwood and things like that. But I guess instinctively, I don't want to play any of this. Like Watson, Wolf, Glover, are these guys that much better than, like, say, Sam Burns or Stallings? I don't think so. So maybe we'll do this. Maybe like 3 guys in the 7K range, or, you know, mid 7K range. 1 guy in the 8,500 range, and Burns would be my first guy. And then Johnson. So that's my very, very first look. And after I do research and ownerships and stuff like that, I expect to change, but as I like to say, just for the hell of it. I mean, we just can't quite have this win without us having. But aside from that, that's going to be my Uber first look of the week. And yeah, again, I'm off tomorrow, and I'll be back on Wednesday.